When was the last time you caught yourself saying, "I used to be able to," about something you never actually tried again to check if it was still true? I said that phrase so often about so many different things that I stopped noticing I was saying it at all. Somewhere around 75, I started speaking about myself in a kind of past tense, even in my own head, without ever once testing whether the past tense was actually accurate or just a habit of speech I'd fallen into. I used to be able to. I said those words so often they stopped feeling like observations and started feeling like settled facts, the way a rumor starts sounding like history if enough people repeat it long enough. Have you ever asked yourself, honestly, how many of your own "I used to's" were ever actually retested versus just quietly accepted and repeated? I hadn't, not once, not until I sat with the question directly and realized I didn't actually know the answer for a single one of them. You've probably caught yourself doing the same thing, narrating your own decline as though it were already finished business, closed, settled, nothing left to check. I didn't set out to prove anything to anyone. I just got tired of quietly assuming my own body had already made up its mind about who I was now, without my ever actually asking it directly. In a minute, I'll tell you exactly what finally got my attention enough to ask. What eventually interrupted that story for me was learning that an erection depends on three systems working together: hormonal, nervous system signal, and blood flow, governed by nitric oxide. The hormonal piece, testosterone, does decline gradually with age in most men, but declining and finished are two very different words, and I'd been treating them as the same thing. Once I actually separated those two words in my own head, a whole set of assumptions I'd never questioned started to come apart. Declining doesn't mean gone. It just means something needs attention, the same way a garden that's been neglected still has soil worth working with, not a lost cause to abandon. These days, I have more energy through a full day than I remember having in my late 70s. I took up ballroom dancing lessons with my wife last year, something that would have sounded absurd to me a few years earlier, and I haven't missed a single Tuesday class since. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because I genuinely thought that chapter of trying new things was closed for me. Here's what reframed everything. The blood vessels involved here are some of the smallest in your entire circulatory system. Smaller than the ones feeding your heart, so circulation issues tend to show up here first. Researchers who study this treat it as a meaningful early signal. It's one of the reasons doctors who specialize in this area often say that erectile difficulty can act as an early warning sign for cardiovascular problems elsewhere in the body, sometimes showing up years before a heart problem would otherwise become obvious through any other symptom. For 3 years, I slept 3 feet away from my wife, and it felt like 300 miles. She'd fall asleep first. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wide awake, feeling like a roommate in my own marriage. I thought something was wrong with me. It wasn't weakness, and it wasn't just age. Here's what no one ever sits a man down to explain. This isn't about willpower. It's about specific systems in your body quietly losing steam year after year, while nobody tells you it's even happening. The pills my doctor handed me gave me headaches, made my chest feel tight, and honestly, they made me feel like I needed a pill just to feel like a man. I wasn't willing to live like that. There's a gentler way to bring those systems back, without any of that. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore. I'll show you exactly what changed it in this video, and if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. So here's what actually helped. Korean red ginseng, an ancient root used for centuries that modern research has actually gone back and studied properly. A systematic review pooling 7 separate clinical trials found a meaningful effect on erectile function compared to placebo, and a later meta-analysis, also pooling 7 trials with over 300 men, found that Korean red ginseng appeared to modestly improve erectile function in men with mild to moderate difficulty. I want to be honest that the researchers themselves described the evidence as promising but still limited. The trials were relatively small, and more research is needed before anyone calls it settled. But it's real, peer-reviewed, repeated evidence, not folklore dressed up as science. I started taking a standardized extract daily, the kind used in the actual trials, Not just any root sold at a discount, since I'd learned the hard way that dosage and preparation matter as much as the ingredient itself. I added a few other pieces around it. Vegetables rich in dietary nitrate, feeding the same nitric oxide pathway from a different direction. A short walk most mornings in real daylight, supporting the blood vessel lining directly. Better sleep, since testosterone production leans heavily on genuinely deep sleep. Less alcohol, since it undoes a fair amount of what the rest of the system builds. I gave it a full 2 months before I trusted it, the same caution I'd developed after years of getting my hopes up too early for things that didn't pan out. That caution served me well, honestly. It meant I wasn't disappointed by the slow start, and I wasn't surprised when the real change showed up gradually instead of all at once, closer to the timeline the actual research described than to whatever a flashy advertisement might have promised. My wife and I hosted our entire extended family for a holiday gathering last year, and I was the one still setting up chairs and running errands at 10 at night while my sons, both in their 50s, had already sat down for good. My daughter-in-law actually asked my son, half joking, why he couldn't keep up with his own father. I think about a man named Gerald who wrote in, 68, who told me he'd assumed anything called ancient or traditional was automatically unscientific, until he actually looked at the research himself and found real clinical trials behind it. He said that surprised him more than almost anything else in the whole process, enough that he went back and reconsidered a few other things he'd dismissed the same way over the years. If you're on medication for blood pressure or your heart, please hear this clearly. Nothing here replaces your treatment, and you should never stop or change a medication on your own. Mention anything new to your doctor every single time. Gerald's comment stuck with me too, honestly, because I recognized the same reflex in myself. We're taught to treat ancient as a synonym for unscientific, when really it just means something people have used long enough to have noticed it works, long before anyone had the tools to explain exactly why. Gerald told me he'd gone back afterward and looked into a couple of other traditional remedies he'd dismissed the same way over the years, this time actually checking whether there was real research behind them instead of assuming there wasn't. He said he found himself more curious than skeptical for the first time in years, which felt like its own small, unexpected gift. What I want you to walk away with is this. Declining and finished are not the same word. I've been treating my own story as settled, and it wasn't. It still isn't. I think about how many small, preemptive apologies I offered over the years, disclaimers nobody had actually asked for, all built on an assumption I'd never once tested directly. Once I stopped narrating my own decline out loud, even to myself, I noticed how much room that silence made for something different to actually happen. Your erections don't disappear just because you got older. They fade when the systems behind them, blood flow, nitric oxide, hormones, energy, and recovery, slowly stop getting the support they need. Ignore that long enough, and it becomes harder to reverse. That's why I take this concentrated formula every morning. Not one ingredient trying to fix everything, but several working together to support circulation, energy, and drive from the inside out. It's a natural, doctor-backed protocol designed to support pathways your body already knows how to use. No prescription, nothing artificial. Stronger, present, confident again. And unlike the pills I tried, I didn't feel disconnected from my own body. No headaches, just steady, gradual change. My wife noticed before I even said a word. The presentation is linked right below this video. It won't replace your doctor or a healthy lifestyle. It's simply there to support your body. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore, and it's not too late for you. There's a particular danger in narrating your own decline out loud, even quietly, even just to yourself. Language has a way of hardening into belief the more often it's repeated, until a passing observation about one bad week starts sounding like a permanent verdict about the man you've become. Catching that habit early, before it calcified any further, turned out to matter as much as anything I actually did about the underlying physiology. I think about the man I was, narrating his own decline as though it were already over. And I think about the man I am now, who stopped accepting that story. That's not vanity, that's dignity. Proof, in the end, was never really the point. What I actually wanted was simpler than proving anything to anyone. I just wanted to stop introducing myself with an apology I'd never actually needed to make. If you've ever caught yourself talking about your own decline as though it were already finished, tell me in the comments. And if rewriting that story is something you're interested in too, subscribe. There's more of this ahead.